Are you ready to hear about one of the most audacious heists in history? Imagine a gang of robbers attempting to steal the world's largest perfect diamond. Who were these daring criminals, and how did they plan to pull off such a monumental task? And what was the fate of the diamond? Did it fall into their hands, or was it all for nothing? In this video, we delve into the incredible heist to steal the world's largest perfect diamond. In November 2000, a criminal gang attempted to steal the Beers Millennium Star, the world's most perfect diamond, in what would have been the most audacious robbery in British history. The police had been monitoring the gang's activities on CCTV and were aware of their plans, but did not know when or how they would carry out the heist. The subsequent police operation to thwart the robbery was the largest in the flying squad's history and involved the use of never-before-seen police footage and testimony from those involved. The events leading up to the robbery began 9 months earlier, in February 2000, when flying squad officers received reports of a possible terrorist incident or robbery. The events leading up to the robbery began 9 months earlier, in February 2000, when flying squad officers received reports of a possible terrorist incident or robbery at Nine Elms in Battersea. In February 2000, John Shatford and his team of flying squad officers responded to reports of a possible terrorist incident or robbery at Nine Elms Lane, a busy main road that runs along the south bank of the Thames. Upon arriving, they discovered a failed armed raid in progress, in which the robbers had attempted to steal cash from an armored car using a self-made battering ram attached to a flatbed lorry. The robbers were forced to abandon their plans and set fire to their vehicles when a driver blocked them in and took their keys in anger. They then escaped on foot to the nearby Thames, where they had a waiting inflatable dinghy to make their getaway. The police were unable to gather much forensic evidence due to the robbers' meticulous planning and attempts to prevent it, such as exploding the vehicles they used in the raid. After failing to find any suspects or forensics, the flying squad narrowed their focus on the gang's distinctive escape plan, crossing the river by boat. They began to investigate other cash depots located near rivers, suspecting that the gang would strike again. Soon enough, the gang struck again in Halesford, Kent, using a van with a steel spike to ram a security van. However, their attempt was foiled when the police interrupted them. The gang managed to escape by driving to the River Medway and speeding off on a boat. The robbery and getaway were identical to the Nine Elms raid, and the gang's identity was confirmed by the Gertie 2 writing on the spike, indicating that it was the same team. After the Kent raid, police quickly linked the same gang to the Nine Elms raid using the lorry-mounted spike. A lonely constable recognized the vehicle used in the Aylesford robbery as the one he had seen entering Tong Farm, an isolated small holding owned by a scrap metal dealer, Lee Wenham. The flying squad and Kent police launched a joint surveillance operation which revealed the comings and goings of Wenham's truck and stolen vehicles, as well as images of the heavy criminals believed to be from London. Ray Betson and Will Cockram, two career criminals well known to London detectives, were identified as visitors to the farm. This was a significant breakthrough for the investigation, as Betson was considered extremely dangerous, capable of planning a heist of this magnitude. Despite having relatively few criminal convictions, Betson was known for his charisma and skill in the criminal underworld. Cockram was Betson's right-hand man, and while he may have appeared unremarkable on the street, he had a presence within the criminal community. Police had initially spotted Betson and Cockram at the farm, but had no evidence linking them to the armed robberies. It wasn't until they identified the driver of a van, Terence Millman, a known armed robber with a formidable record, that another piece of the puzzle fell into place. Millman's involvement gave the gang the caliber that was expected, and he was not only known to the police but also respected in London's underworld. Detectives had identified the key members of the gang as Betson, Cockram, Millman, and Wenham, who provided them with a base. On the 25th of August, the police cameras filmed the arrival of a familiar getaway vehicle at the farm, indicating that the gang was preparing for their next job. However, the police had no idea where the job would be and could only rely on guesswork. They gathered as much intelligence as they could about potential targets and drew up plans around possible locations. One day, at a meeting between the flying squad and Kent police, it emerged that Lee Wenham appeared to be organizing a family day. He was looking to purchase a family ticket for around £58. The intelligence picked up that the cost of a family ticket to go to the Dome was also £58. The Millennium Dome in Greenwich had been plagued by issues such as overspending, poor attendance, and critical reviews since its opening. But it was the site of the largest exhibition in Britain in the year 2000. One DI at Greenwich suggested that unless they were going to steal the Millennium Diamond, it seemed awkward for Wenham to be interested in going to the dome. Detectives suspected the gang was planning a robbery, but didn't know the target. They learned that Lee Wenham was visiting the Millennium Dome and discovered he was visiting the Diamond Vault multiple times. They used a cover story to infiltrate an officer into the CCTV control room and filmed Wenham's every move. They now knew the target and could plan a response. Operation Magician was the flying squad's plan to catch the gang in the act of robbing the Millennium Star. The plan required finding out when the diamonds would be most vulnerable and informing the diamond owners about the robbery plot. The diamonds were housed in an impregnable vault, but the display cabinets had to be open to the public, and the glass was supposed to be unbreakable. Despite the extensive planning and preparations, the diamond raid did not take place. The security staff removed the diamonds from the dome's vault and replaced them with replicas. The armored convoy carrying the replicas left the dome at 6 a.m. and traveled through the Blackwall Tunnel, which was identified as the most likely place for the gang to strike. However, nothing happened, and the convoy arrived safely at the De Beers London headquarters. John Shatford was puzzled and disappointed that the anticipated robbery did not occur, and he retreated to a corner to contemplate what had happened. Despite the failed attempt to intercept the diamond during transit, the flying squad had received new information that the gang was still planning to rob the diamond, this time from inside the Millennium Dome. With this new information, the police knew they had to act fast and set up a risky armed ambush in a public place to catch the robbers in the act. The operation was still on and the stakes were high. The man in charge of the dome did not agree with the audacious plan and threatened to stop it, fearing it could turn into a bloodbath. However, senior officers saw the opportunity to arrest the dangerous gang in a controlled environment with solid evidence. Undercover colleagues kept the gang under surveillance, leading to the discovery of a fifth member, audacious, who was an unlikely armed robber and failed property developer with a taste for luxury. Though he seemed different from the rest, he still had a role to play. Police focused their surveillance on the gang's getaway vehicle, a boat, to ensure they could apprehend the ultimate target. They also discovered that the gang would use a JCB in the robbery, but they were unsure of its intended purpose. The police had to keep an extensive 24-hour presence in and around the dome while keeping it secret from the gang. The gang's visits to the dome became more frequent, and they only seemed to turn up at certain times on certain days as the autumn progressed. Police plans to stop a diamond heist at the Millennium Dome depended on the high tide of the Thames River. The police had a 30-minute window of opportunity during high tide to deploy their officers. The operation involved 100 officers who disguised themselves as cleaners, tour guides, and dome employees. They waited in the CCTV control room until the JCB left its hideout. On the first try, the JCB turned back due to a police car, and the operation was called off. However, the police checked the tidal charts and decided to have one last chance the next morning. They positioned officers and armed officers along the route and around the dome, and this time they succeeded in stopping the heist. But at 9:29 a.m., a JCB driven by the notorious Betson made its way toward the dome, with 3 other robbers hidden in the modified cab. As the tension mounted, a coachload of children arrived, complicating matters further. But just moments later, at 9:33 a.m., the robbers struck, taking out a reinforced concrete pillar with the JCB and crashing through the fence. Will they get away with the heist of a lifetime? It was an unbelievable sight to behold, but little did we know that things were about to escalate to a whole new level. The JCB, unstoppable in its power, crashed through a towering gate like a hot knife through butter. And just when you thought it couldn't get any crazier, the unthinkable happened. With a deafening crash, the JCB tore straight through the sidewall of the dome, leaving us all in absolute shock. But the madness didn't end there. As the boat made its way towards the landing stage, the robbers jumped out of the JCB like a pack of wild animals, smoke grenades flying in all directions. It was a scene straight out of an action movie. And to make matters worse, they looked like terrorists. This heart-stopping moment was one for the history books, and Tim Thorne, watching from De Beers headquarters via video link, could hardly believe his eyes. The tension was palpable as we watched in disbelief as the robbers pulled out state hammers and what looked like a gun. And then, in a split second, they fired the gun-shaped object into the display case seal, shattering Thorne's confidence in the reinforced glass. The other robber then grabbed the hammer and began pounding away, creating a gaping hole in the side of the display cabinet. But little did they know, they were being watched and monitored for months, waiting for the perfect opportunity to strike. When the moment finally came, the ambush was swift and precise. With a nod of agreement, the boys were sent in, and in less than a minute, the gang was taken down. No casualties, no injuries, just a triumphant victory for the police. This was the ultimate showdown that had us on the edge of our seats, and the end result was nothing short of exhilarating. The perfect heist? Not quite. They thought they had it all planned out, but in the end, it was the action that beat the reaction. As Betson and Cherokee were arrested outside the vault, they offered no resistance, overwhelmed by the sheer force of the police response. Inside the vault, police armed with stun grenades overpowered Cockrum and his accomplice, who were left poleaxed by the explosive force. And as the mystery accomplice, Robert Adams, was identified as a man with a conviction for attempted murder, he couldn't help but make light of his situation, joking that he was just 12 inches from payday. But there was no escaping the long arm of the law, as Kevin Meredith was swamped by armed officers on the river and Terrence Millman was arrested disguised as a workman. The perfect heist turned out to be anything but, and the police proved that they were always one step ahead. This was a moment that will go down in history as a reminder that no one is above the law. The heist of the century had been foiled by the flying squad, but not without drama and danger. The audacious plan, the daring break-in, the explosions, and the high-speed chase all made for a thrilling story that captivated the public. And when the trial finally came, it revealed just how sophisticated the robbers' plan had been, with industrial nail guns and expert knowledge of reinforced glass. Defense lawyers tried to downplay the gang's actions by arguing that they weren't armed during the robbery. But with their military-grade appearance, meticulous planning, and use of a JCP as a makeshift tank, it was clear to the jury that this was no ordinary smash and grab. The verdict was in, and the Dome Raiders were brought to justice. Dome Raiders Ray Burson and William Cockrum were sentenced to 18 years in prison for their involvement in the attempted robbery of the Millennium Star. Fellow gang members Aldo Cherokee and Robert Adams received 15 years. Boat driver Kevin Meredith was sentenced to 5 years for conspiracy to steal, while Lee Wenham received 4 years for his part in the Dome robbery, an additional 9 years for the Aylesford heist. No other members of the gang have been brought to trial for either the Aylesford or Nine Elms robbery. The last member of the group, Terrence Millman, passed away from cancer while in custody awaiting trial. In the years following the trial, rumors have persisted about the robbery's true mastermind. Some suggested a Russian connection, and there are whispers that the diamond was intended to be delivered to them. Unbelievable! Even if they succeeded, their grand plan would have been a complete waste. The priceless Millennium Star was swapped for a fake by De Beers before the gang could strike. But was it just luck, or were there other players involved? Speculations abound, and the mystery of the Great Dome Diamond robbery lingers on. In the end, the attempted heist of the world's largest perfect diamond proved to be a complete failure for the gang of robbers. But the intrigue and speculation surrounding the incident has continued to this day. Was there a Russian connection? Were there other players involved? We may never know the full truth behind this incredible heist, but one thing is certain. It will always be remembered as one of the most audacious and daring attempts to steal a priceless gem.